hello everyone. I hope everyone had a excellent week. I'm just making sure that this is going up as it should to all the appropriate spots. So this week, as you can see, my daughter had a bit of fun. So here we go. I had a few grey hairs, and my daughter was like, "Yeah, we'll get you some hair dye." We did it at home, and I'm not sure if I can pull it off. Let me know in the comments how you guys think it went. I hope everyone's having a wonderful Easter. Um, I had a couple of family rock up and see them and doing amazing now. So, okay, what have we got for you tonight? I'm just going to do a quick audio check to make sure you can hear me and see me very well. I'm just going to adjust that camera. It's kind of askew. Okay, let's start. Okay, now we're going to start off with the scare campaign on the budget, how they are delivering it, making it all sound as if it's a doom and gloom thing for everybody. The LNP held an emergency meeting. Murdoch's damage on democracy, and how his love has gone. The Voice breakdown, we're going to talk about what the Voice and the referendum, how it's being handled by our political leaders. Turnbull regrets a situation with Dutton, how a betting agency scam. Now, this one, it seems like it barely got a whimper of a view. Now, the reason I'm going to discuss this particular story is super interesting. Every week I've spoken about places shutting down, not wanting pokies anymore, and how gambling, I feel, has entrenched a lot of families. How a church could be held liable. Queensland policing issues, what a recent court found, and the infamous Trump arraignment. Now, the reason I'm not going to touch the Trump arraignment too much is one, because it's US politics, two, because I believe that the US has overplayed the Trump arraignment, and I think the fact that he's already out on bail is a whole nother thing. You know, if it was me and I had 36 felonies, I probably couldn't walk free, but that's where we're at. Okay, so first up, scare campaign on budget. See, because the LNP have lost so much ground politically, the news has taken to creating everything from downright disinformation on what Josh Frydenberg did in his last budget, and that has sort of crept into now and how it's impacting now, and then trying to blame Labor for it, because of course any Murdoch entity has to find a way to blame Labor. Of course they're not going to have a job if they go out there and then say, no, this is purely because Josh Frydenberg did something stupid and you're going to be on the receiving end of it. That would be real journalism, but that's not what their viewers want, clearly, because they would see it differently. So let's have a look at how they are writing it up and exactly how sneaky this whole thing is. Okay, so let's have a look so I can show you how they've done it. Business leaders bracing for the tax the rich budget. Now, this is an ALP thing, but then they're going to make it sound like if even middle income earners, the really, really struggling lot of people, like the most struggling on the tax bracket and on the work-life balance struggle as well, as well, as far as I'm concerned, is having a super hard time. And the Murdoch media is really pumping the tires of, well, you know, it's got to be ALP's fault because whatever was left behind is left behind. So it's a weird thing that they're doing right now, as if, you know, anything that Jim Chalmers does, it's bad, and there's no coming back. And they're deliberately. There is a tweet I wanted to show you around this that I found. 1 second. I only just remembered I wanted it. Which I think you should see in terms of understanding this. Alrighty. All right, got it. It never takes me long. I always get what I want in the end. Okay, so let's have a look at what they did. See, they weren't just going on that part. They did this. An end to a tax concession, which the LNP and Frydenberg legislated to end. Now isn't Labor's or Chalmers introducing a tax increase. We can see who's being sneaky. How can you just hope to rebrand when you keep lying? Peter Costello bullshit on 9. They're not tax increases. They are in a special temporary tax concessions put in place by the previous Liberal government that also legislated when they would end. Facts matter. And blaming Labor, which is something that they regularly do. So it doesn't matter what the facts are. They're determined to mislead you, to make it sound like ALP is the bigger taxing party. When statistics show out in a 30-year span that the LNP actually are everything from the GST to a whole bunch of other taxes, it's quite clear where that myth of ALP being higher taxing is easy to beat. It's just simple. Any simple economic values that you have will simply not show any instance of Labor taxing more. It's just patently not true. But then someone will go, well, I know a buddy. Sure, you can know a buddy, but the facts and the statistics are not going to bear those facts out. It's not real. This imagined attack where the Conservatives think that they can say, well, the left taxes more. They don't. It's just not true. And they're largely for, this is why a lot of people vote Labor, is because they deal with the middle incomes and the lower incomes. But I believe if we can strike the right chord with this budget under Anthony Albanese, I believe the middle incomes finally need that pickup. They finally need something that will wedge the idea that the middle incomes really are super important. We need like a special boost to middle and low incomes like never before, because I've never seen an economic dire situation more than what we are now. And the scare campaigns that the 9 and Murdoch Empire is going with, it's deliberately leaving that detail out, that making assumptions about where Labor's taxation bracket is, and which is why they're putting it out there that it's like a tax the rich budget. See, they admit one part, but then tell you that it'll affect everybody. This idea that if you tax the higher incomes, that'll affect everybody just simply isn't true. By them not paying the appropriate tax, that affects everyone. That means that middle incomes have to pick up where the higher incomes just won't even touch. That's where we're really at. And the poor, they're the ones left scrambling, are not paid adequately and left in a dire situation because of our taxation system has not caught up with dealing with low and middle incomes. So we really need a budget that pinpoints that. So as you're seeing this scare campaign around the 2023 budget, understand this is the pinpoint of what Albo wants to achieve. So no matter what you hear, that rhetoric on it, if the rich pay the appropriate tax, it'll hurt you, that's just simply not true. And the evidence will bear that out each and every time. And their scare campaign compared to their profit margin. So what will happen is the rich will take this massive profit margin, never pass that on to you, the consumer, ever. And they will continue to raise their prices and then say, well, this is the cost of business. Never actually put it onto the cost of business. They will just reinvent it and give it to their stockholders or a side venture that they want to invest in, or just simply keep the money for themselves. A lot of these big businesses are showing signs that their profit margins are way too high and that they're not being taxed the appropriate rate. So the idea that Albo is attacking them is just simply not true. Albo is not attacking business. What he's simply saying is that the distribution where they get 50% write-off while everyone else gets less than 25%, not fair at all. Not fair at all. You've been fed a lie and a deliberate point of misinformation around this year's budget. I also want to point out that last time that ALP tried to attack this in terms like franking credits and other stuff like this, they were slaughtered because people bought into this. This isn't new that they've done this level of attack. But what will be the game changer now is if we get the truth out there. That's just simply not how it works. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is the LNP have held an emergency meeting. This coincides with how the media is structuring their talk around the LNP. So while they're in panic mode to blame Labor for absolutely everything as always, on the side, they've got this thing where Peter Dutton isn't grabbing the public like the media was hoping he would. So it's kind of backfiring in a big way. So what do I mean when I say that? I mean, they've quite literally got an emergency meeting being held and they're panicked. They are in a real bad state right now. Listen to this, just a small little clip on when Channel 9 is telling you about it. It can't be great. When Peter Costello himself is like, yeah, okay, I think, the cat's out of the bag. We're in real big trouble. They're in big trouble. Okay.
All right, live to Canberra and our political editor, Charles Croucher. Evening, Charles. An emergency meeting of Liberal MPs has been called. What is on the agenda?
Evening, Pete. Well, after the last 2 weekends, there is plenty to talk about. Officially, this will be finding a voice on the Indigenous Voice to Parliament referendum. Liberal MPs tonight weighing three options. They allow a conscious vote, oppose the voice, or propose a compromised alternative on Wednesday. There are deep rifts over the issue. They'll be thrashed out at that meeting Wednesday morning, along with any other arguments plaguing and issues plaguing the party. But the future of the referendum will look a little clearer in 48 hours.
Charles, thank you.
So from that meeting, it turns out Peter Dutton didn't come out looking great. Ooh. Sorry, it turns out Peter Dutton didn't come out smelling like roses. And now they're in a bit of damage control. You have Ken White that's like, I don't want to be part of the Liberal Party anymore. This stinks. You've gone the wrong way. This is not who I want to be part of anymore. You've got Malcolm Turnbull openly revolting, saying, nope, not in. And then you've got every Liberal leader that has ever been that is basically saying we need to go in good faith about the voice. So they've basically revolted against Dutton, and everything is closing in very slowly. Even the Premier of Tasmania, which is a Liberal, is saying no, he will support the voice. Opposition leaders around the country for the Liberals are saying no, we really do have to have a voice going on here. So even in Western Australia, where they know damn well the leader, the name eludes me, but I can tell you this, that the LNP is divided on how they're going to handle this voice. There is this clear part where Peter Dutton is like, no, I'm just going to say no to everything. And then you have the other side going, well, if you do that, we have to walk. What happened in the New South Wales election largely played a role in this, because a lot of moderate Liberals lost their seats, which left a lot of extreme Liberals sitting there. And now they're kind of like, well, let's just follow the extreme group. What could possibly go wrong? And now you're watching the hair on fire moment. So let's talk about what happens while that's going on. Hold on, I'm going to have to move both of those down. Okay, so we're going to discuss the voice and exactly what went wrong. It's going to be said that Peter Dutton he's not being honest about his position on this. He's really saying no, but he's attempting to say, I really want to support this, but if. He's not asking genuine questions. What he's essentially doing is saying, I haven't got enough detail. Okay, the 7 meetings that he took, he didn't ask one question. The 2 meetings with the on top of that he had with the people that created this amazing opportunity, Indigenous leaders, he didn't ask them one question. And then he did the really, really disingenuous thing and then said, people that I spoke to told me that they didn't support it. That's a weird position to take. Listen to this and then tell me he isn't lying. He's bum off about this whole thing and his position.
On the back of Aston, do you think that your position today is something that might lead to further electoral failure?
No. Yep.
Can I clarify, will you be actively campaigning, and to Ms Lee as well, if I can, actively campaigning no against the voice in this referendum?
Yes, I will be. I don't believe this is in our country's best interests. I've spent literally months, like many Australians, trying to understand what it is the Prime Minister.
What he's basically saying, he's trying to understand it. What that basically means is he took the meetings, he didn't ask any questions, and he's just publicly asking questions like he's an idiot who couldn't ask them privately within the right setting. You know, I have no idea why he would do that, but that's what he's done. Well, I do know why, because it's rather than being on the right side of history, like when he walked out of the apology, this is his stance. This is his way of regaining his racism and owning it. He knows it. He knows that this is not the position of the country. He knows that this is deeply unpopular, but now he's set his little cement mix. Let's watch him bury himself in it.
Minister's proposing, we can't get the basic detail out of him. And I think that is a deliberate strategy. Now, we've held off, waiting to see.
Okay, what questions is he asking? See, and as you go along, you're going to hear him say things that are blatantly dishonest. He's going to make claims about what it actually does when it doesn't. He's going to go, well, it does all of these things, and it doesn't. He's lying. Okay, the height of the LNP here in order are the highest tax GDP ratios that have ever been recorded. Here are the top 10 ranked. Level year Prime Minister 1.21. Oh, this is really interesting. Oh, yeah. That's so true. And that's what I've been talking about before, how they are the highest taxing government. They genuinely are. And this proves it. This comment absolutely proves that they do this. What I've found interesting is when they talk about taxes, is that they're always not admitting to making GST a thing and lying about what the GST would actually do. The media was complicit in telling people it would be a fairer system for everyone. Newsflash, it wasn't really. They're lying. So what it really did is make sure more poor people were taxed higher. That's all it did. Okay, so continuing on here.
If there was any advice provided, they've taken a deliberate decision not to give the advice.
So what advice is he looking for? See, Peter Dutton doesn't say what advice he's exactly looking for. He's just going to lie about the detail in that advice.
We now know that the wording put forward in its third form is inconsistent with the advice of the First Law Officer and
Nope, that's not true, and he gets called out for that on Insiders, which I'm going to show you how much he's lying about that.
the Solicitor General. That is a very important point to make. And we're not saying that Indigenous people shouldn't be heard in relation to matters.
Yes, that's exactly what he's saying. He's saying he doesn't want them to be heard because he's a racist asshole and would rather think that listening to the people, you know, the First Nations people is bad for his business. Because this would mean that he can't just call people, he can't just say whatever he wants. There has to be evidence backing it up. He's been caught many times doing this.
That are important to them. Quite the contrary. I'm emphasising that the voice does need to be heard, that they're an advisory body, a structure needs to be established. We're willing to work with the government in a bipartisan way on the legislation so that their voice can be.
Okay, so in the 7 meetings, did he ask a question? No. And he admits to that. He admits to missing, several times when he has legitimately been contacted for the details. He has been missing in question time.
Be heard. Because what I fear with the voice is that it changes our system of government forever. And
no evidence to support that at all. It just makes sure that we're hearing more from Indigenous leaders. That's it.
that we end up with no practical net benefit to people in Indigenous communities, and that would be the worst of both worlds.
How can you prove that statement? It's almost like a double negative statement. Well, you can't prove that it can do anything better. Well, prove that it can't. Then what he's doing is disingenuous from the jump. He's wrong. Okay, it goes on further than this because let me tell you, he's not done. Hold on. Here's where he gets caught out, and then there's a part 2 to that. So here's David Spears calling that out at that very moment.
That has not been what the Prime Minister's been able to.
The point is there are these real problems for the voice to get on with. Isn't it a bit alarmist, a bit ridiculous even to say, oh, it's going to be, gumming up the works of the Reserve Bank or the Defence Force?
Well, David, this is the biggest change proposed to the Australian Constitution since Federation.
Yeah, how? How would it do that? That's the thing. He can never prove his own statements. And then Barnaby Joyce tried to reinforce that, and it was wrong.
And the Prime Minister can't answer the basic questions in relation to how it will apply, how it will work. And you can't out-legislate constitutional change. So if you're going to change the Constitution, you need to be assured that it's going to be for the best. It's not going to be another layer of bureaucracy, that the voice will actually reflect the views of people on the ground so that you can get the sort of outcomes
would you back
you're
it?
talking
Would
about.
you back it if the words executive government were taken out?
Well, the government's been clear that they, and in fact, they've gone against the Solicitor General's advice on this issue, that they are
That's
going to
not
keep,
what they say.
well,
To be
Yeah,
clear.
see?
Their view is they've said the Solicitor General supports where they've landed.
And then he goes on to qualify the lie, even after being caught. about what the Solicitor General really said. He goes on, and David Spears gives no pushback.
The Solicitor General and the Attorney General went into the committee with advice to take out executive government. They were overruled.
They deny that, Mr. Dutton. They deny that, Mr. Dutton.
Well,
I just need to be straight with our viewers. They've denied that.
That's what happened, David.
How do you know?
Well, I have a better understanding, I suspect, than...
Were you in the room?
No, but I have a very clear understanding. I think some of your panellists and others have written on this with multiple sources out of the room, and it has been the advice to the government consistently.
But regardless, if they took that wording out, you still may not back it, right?
Well, we'll have a look at the wording. The government's been clear that they're not going to take it out, and that is a deal breaker for them. And the Prime Minister has sided with the committee over the advice of the Solicitor General.
So when will you make a call on this?
See, he just made that comment again against the advices of the Solicitor General. No pushback whatsoever. He knows he's lying. He knows it. He just got told he was lying, and then he went and made that same claim again.
In due course, and our party room will meet to have a discussion about what is a very substantial change.
You wouldn't stop the referendum going ahead, though, would you?
Well, David, we'll meet as a party room and we'll have a look at the
You wouldn't stop the voice from going ahead, would you? Yeah, like I said earlier, he would. He's lying. If you believe any part of what he says, you would have to have rocks in your head. He's outwardly lying to everybody about his position. He knows that overwhelmingly around the country, the voice is popular. So now he has to have oh yeah, but there's really not enough detail. Despite copious amounts of detail that he's been given, despite every opportunity for him to make comments, he just doesn't. But he could ask all the questions in the appropriate committees, but doesn't. And he doesn't even rock up to it. Even when David Spears is like, well, how do you know? Were you there? No, but I've heard sources. So what sources? No source backed him. That's the thing. He couldn't even name a source that backed that. He's like, well, I just heard. No, he's wrong. And he's wrong every time when he does this. Okay, and then next we're going to see him make a claim about going to communities with this ridiculousness, trying to say that, he's heard that people don't want the voice. Listen to this claim.
Do you discount the ordinary statement?
I'll keep going, Charles.
Both yourself and the Deputy Leader have referred to this as the Prime Minister's question. He consulted with the Voice Working Group. There were people behind him when he announced the question. Specifically, who have yourself, the Deputy Leader, the Shadow Attorney General, consulted in coming to your conclusion outside of the party room?
Well, Charles, as I say, we had a very impactful visit to Alice Springs, and we spoke to people within the community, in the town camps. We went to their homes.
So does he have any evidence of that? Because Albo does. Albo made all of those things public. And it came from the branch of the Uluru Statement from the Heart. And this is why I think that this is super duper important. I think Dutton is really unraveling at this point. Slowly but surely, you can see that he understands that you can't just say, well, some people have told me this privately, with no evidence of public showing at all. Like every school teacher will say to you, show your work. He's not prepared to do that at this point.
We went to the local school. We spoke to the teachers. We spoke to elders in Leonora. We had a very significant town hall meeting in Leonora. We spoke with Indigenous elders in Laverton. We were up in East Arnhem Land, as I say, and speaking with leaders up there. We've had a number of private conversations with Indigenous elders, and I feel very confident, I've got to say, in the position that we've adopted. We do believe in constitutional recognition.
See, I really want to say yes, but I'm saying no. We do believe in constitutional recognition because that stance is very, very popular. But how does he wiggle room into saying no? He'll say there's not enough detail. He knows that's the thing. He knows what he's doing. He just doesn't care at this point. This is why his position is untenable. He cannot hold this position.
It's a very important policy, and I want to sit down with the Prime Minister to work out the wording so that we can introduce it sooner than later. I want to hear those local voices, and that's an integral part of what we're proposing here. And I think by doing that, the Liberal Party's proposition.
Now it's incumbent on the media to go around and find out who he spoke to, because he was dumb enough to not show his work. Now the media can't just take him at his word and then say, I spoke to people. They've got to ask him more questions like who? Who are you saying that backs this position? Notice two things. There is no Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander flag associated in this press conference. That is deliberate by design. So this is another sign that he is not prepared to have a legitimate talk on The Voice when you leave those flags out. That's point number one. Point number two, when he can't legitimately ask a real question in relation to this, and every time he pretends like he's asking a question, he will do it publicly, never in question time, never to the appropriate bodies. It's always like this. To the media, that will never go, no, that's wrong. It's just crazy.
Here today, in opposing the Prime Minister's Canberra voice, we're actually uniting the country and bringing people together on something that practically is going to work, but not disrupt our way of government.
So they specifically told you.
I think
not,
we'll keep. We'll
to
do.
clarify Charles's point, if I can, Mr. Dutton.
No, we'll go to Phil.
You.
We'll go to Phil, and then we'll come back.
Right now, this is where it starts to unravel just a little, because you're thinking at this point, where does it become undone? This is where it starts to come a little bit unstuck, and then you realize, nah, he's screwed the pooch on this one. He just can't admit that he did. Okay, so now he's forced to quantify that.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're
So they
defer,
specifically told you when you had those meetings in communities, they wanted you to actively campaign no for a voice to Parliament.
Absolutely, no question. I mean, we met with Indigenous leaders who were strongly in favour of the.
Show your work. Now the media needs to backtrack and find those people. Otherwise, didn't happen. There's a reason that he doesn't have those flags up too. He's being deliberately misleading about the whole thing.
Voice, no question about that. Particularly in East Arnhem Land, that was the general consensus. I'd say in Arnhem Land, but elsewhere, absolutely without hesitation. They don't believe that a body of 24 people selected, predominantly capital cities. One Indigenous lady said to me, and I'll quote her, I don't want 24 academics representing us because...
Yeah, who is this lady? Was this some sort of Liberal that told you this? And you're just going to spew it out as truth? Did Miranda Devine give you this great idea? That's not even her real name, but sure, we'll go with that.
Because they just won't be our voice. And she was an Indigenous elder, a person who actually was taking in foster children, for whom I had a great deal of respect, her own story, and she couldn't have been any clearer to me.
So who is this woman and where is she from? Is this another fake tradie? Because I can tell you now, it's not hard to figure these things out. They get caught out very quickly, like that woman that was making claims about how she worked in these communities and how she'd witnessed all these things. And then when she was pressed on it, she never worked in those communities. She didn't even know anything about it. She was wrong. So there's time and time again, we have to show them that they are on the wrong side of history yet again. But here's how the country really views it. Every state but Queensland has overwhelming majority saying they would like the voice. Take a listen.
The latest news poll shows a majority of Australians in a majority of states support the voice. The yes vote is not there in Queensland, and support in WA does not appear assured. If 3 states vote no, the voice referendum would fail. The latest news poll shows a majority of Australians in a majority of states support the voice. The yes vote is not there in Queensland, and support in WA does not appear assured. If 3 states vote no, the voice is overwhelmingly at a majority for people. Look at it, 60%, 55%, 56, 55, 51. That's more than 3.
There it is. There's your numbers. So that's where we're at. Okay. So next we're going to show you what that means. Dan Andrews called it right from the jump. He was like, I just don't like how you've managed this, like with Peter Dutton. So listen to this. Dan Andrews calls it out exactly for what the LNP have done.
This is our moment. We need to give Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people a voice and deliver in full on the Uluru Statement from the Heart. And it is absolutely breathtaking. It is appalling for the Liberal Party to say that this is an act of division. This is an opportunity and an obligation for national unity. That's what this is. Putting right the injustices of the past, or at least taking a big step towards doing that. Do you think that you get unity by telling First Nations leadership who gathered and laid down that Uluru Statement from the Heart, telling them that they were wrong? That's a unifying act, is it? This is appalling. It is absolutely appalling. And the Liberal and National Party, despite any state-based weasel words, stand condemned. To campaign against this is just wrong. It's just wrong. That's my view. People have to make their own judgments. But part of leadership is calling out racism, bigotry, and just a mean-spiritedness, a nastiness. They are a nasty outfit. If we can't find it in our hearts as a modern progressive Australia to acknowledge the terrible horrors of our past, then we will never have a shared future together. The final lines of the Uluru Statement simply ask for that all Australians walk with First Nations Australians. Is that too much to ask?
Okay, so that puts it squarely in the part of the Conservatives to unite around and actually do what's right for the nation, so we can legitimately close the gap and have a legitimate discussion about what that looks like. So with the Simply Asking Questions group needs to be smacked down for it. And Susan Lay is another one attempting that. This is what I mean when they're coming out and they're saying stuff like this. They know what's happening here, that I'm just asking questions that isn't asking any real questions. It's a way to leave the door open to be racist and horrible.
We do need a respectful debate, and it's turned a bit nasty in the last couple of days. I don't like that. You're not a bad person for thinking that you might vote no.
There are still good and brave people in the Liberal Party.
You're not a bad person if you vote no. I'm going to dispute that outwardly. If you're a person considering voting no on a constitutional human right for our First Nations people to be properly recognised within our Constitution and have an enriched voice to make sure that their representatives are heard adequately, yeah, you are a pretty freaking awful person if that's how you want to sit on that fence. There isn't a debate about those basic bits there. And that's where we need to take a stand. We need to call it out. They're not having a legitimate debate with us. They're on the side of oppression. By voting no, they are oppressing the First Nations voice. And that's exactly how they'd like to keep it, because that is the intent of a party that is devoid of any real policy and is about making sure that we have something to battle on rather than if we have something to unite on. And that's precisely why voting yes makes you a significantly better Australian in this whole thing.
Like Bridget Archer. But the sad fact is the Liberal Party under Peter Dutton now looks more like Pauline Hanson than Robert Menzies.
We do need a...
That's the thing. When Ken Wyatt said that he didn't want any part of the Liberal Party, it's because he played a major role in making sure this was done in a respectful way. that you couldn't delegitimize it by saying it was a partisan thing. He knew right from the jump that it wasn't. And that heavy consultation between the two parties was made in goodwill. So that's that. So any further debate that would try and give off the feel that this is not, hold on, I just accidentally deleted something and I shouldn't have. Any legitimate debate that they're not having because they're trying to figure out the best path forward. They know the best path forward. The one where you support the community, not the one where you're like, no, let's just fight over it. You know, if they had any real policies, they would be like, yeah, we should vote yes on this. Let's move the country forward and actually talk policy. But that's not what they want to do. And they don't want to do that by design. Because if they were forced to, they wouldn't be doing it. If they had any real policy, they wouldn't be doing this. Okay, so now we are, hold on. We're going to talk about how deceitful Dutton is being. Okay. Let's see other ways of showing how bad Dutton has screwed the pooch on this one.
Detail that he's brought up in making this decision. He says that his decision to oppose the voice to Parliament is based on his view that it is an elitist, and I quote, Canberra model, that it won't improve the lives of Indigenous Australians. Can you respond to that?
He couldn't be further from the truth, and I deeply resent that deceitful opinion that he's expressed. Tom Calmer and I were co-chairs of the senior advisory group in the voice co-design process appointed by Ken Wyatt. And we chaired meetings of 52 people, including a national voice co-design group and a local and regional voice co-design group from all over the country, from rural and remote Australia and from the cities, from every state and territory. And it was a collaborative effort. And a lot of people say that that was a government report. No, it was not. It is the report of the 52 people on that voice co-design committee. And we presented 2 reports to Ken Wyatt. He's explained this in public a number of times. He took the interim report to Cabinet, no comment. He took the final report to Cabinet, no comment.
So they know that they're playing with some really dicey bits here. They know that they're lying about exactly what this is. They know that they've got all the details there. It is lined out, signed, sealed, and delivered. They know it. For Dutton to pretend like he's just asking questions, he's lying. That there shows that parts of the Liberal Party are legitimately engaged in that part of it. But let's listen to Semi J and his comedic role in approach to that very part of Peter Dutton's weird stance.
Hi, everyone. I just got off the phone to Peter Dutton and we wrote this song together to clarify his position around the voice because there's been some confusion. It's his words, my music, kind of like a Elton John, Bernie Taupin arrangement. I support recognition in the Constitution and I want a national voice coupled with local and regional input so everyone gets a choice. I regret walking out of the apology, but I've come a long way, I guess. So when faced with the vote to deliver the things that I want, I'm gonna vote no, but I really mean yes. So don't let them tell you no lies, cause you know that my no, it's just a yes in disguise. And sometimes you've gotta stand up, and sometimes you've gotta be strong, and sometimes you've just got to tell the collective Indigenous leaders they're wrong. So sorry, Ken Wyatt, but that is why it's a no, when I really mean yes. So why can't you see? You say it's all about listening, but nobody's listening to me. This is the statement of Dutton, and I'm making it straight from the heart. So when I say no, just remember that my no was a yes from the start.
So this is a moment. I mean, I have to add some light stuff to this. This is a very serious situation and a position that we can't just let them get away with this stance. Now I'm going to show you Barnaby Joyce outwardly lying about what is actually in it. And the reason I have to do that, the reason you have to call it out is because you cannot let an idiot have the last word. You just can't. If you do that, you're basically handing the floor to the idiot. And when they're wrong, you got to say something. I cannot stand Barnaby Joyce. How he gets there, I don't know. People of New England, that's disgraceful. Could have had Tony Windsor, but here we are. Dickhead of the year. All right. Listen to this outward BS the whole way. Andrew Bolt, because of course, where else would Barnaby Joyce go for such a very well-enriched opinion? You know.
On the philosophical premise number one, I disagree with this voice. But then we see what comes with it. This is not just a feel-good motion. This is talking about the capacity to have influence over the governor of the Reserve Bank, the Governor General.
Yeah, the Governor of the Reserve Bank and the Governor General. Really, Barnaby? Want to show us where it does that? Or do you just get to make that ridiculous claim on Andrew Bolt's show? That's where we're at. This is why we can't have nice things. This is why. Because they're going to outwardly lie about what you should be getting and how you should be heard. This is why we can't have nice things. Because the people that vote for dickheads like that. Are you kidding me? He knows that's a lie. But it didn't start with him telling that lie. Peter Dutton started that lie. I showed you that earlier. Peter Dutton was like, yeah, this must mean that it changes the Governor General's approach. What? Where? How? Those people have not said that at all, but it's okay because he gets to say it. Okay.
Cabinet ministers who select High Court judges.
High Court judges, really? I didn't know that the Voice was doing all those things. Did you read the 273 pages, or is this like a 900-word text that you really didn't write? Okay, from the water invoice.
Real powers, more power than any cabinet minister has got. On the
he knows he's lying. Even the crickets out there know he's lying. Dude, go and make another baby with your weird loving mistress and stay out of people's lives. I honestly hate the fact that he sits in Parliament legitimately. That's my stance. Okay, so here's where we get to see who is the better PM, right? We're going to show you exactly why they're doing this. This is all clickbaiting. In the furor over Peter Dutton's refusal to back the Voice, never forget he's so terminally hated by most Australians, everyone except for men aged over 60 to be exact, that his opposition to him may in fact cause many people to vote yes. Because when you have such a disingenuous take and you're such a lying asshole, people are going to go, hey, is what he's saying true, or is he just doing another liberal lie? And that, my friends, is why this is going to blow spectacularly up in their faces. They are not going to be the winning narrative here. I refuse to let these idiots be the last voices that we hear on this really important issue. Okay. So, Next, we're going to talk about Malcolm Turnbull now has these serious regrets about backing Dutton. Now, what would Dutton have possibly said that was racist before? See, when you're a person of colour and you say things once about a person of colour, there's going to be other times when you've said something stupid. And it'll always get thrown back up when you do that. And why? Because you probably shouldn't have said that very stupid thing. Like walking out on an apology for the Indigenous people. Like saying no to the voice, but pretending like you're just asking questions. What about if you said something about African crime gangs that were never true? Well, that was a stance Peter Dutton once took. What if it turns out Malcolm Turnbull now says that was the wrong move? Peter Dutton shows his hand every time. Every single time. Now I'm going to show you that, and then I'm going to show you piece by piece why that was a bad idea. Because each and every time we've asked him to have a better position on race issues, he's always on the wrong side of history. Beginning with the walking out of the national apology. Well, if you believe some stories, it even goes back further than that, leaving 3 Aboriginal children to find their way back to town after he took their shoes off a mat and then dropped them in the middle of nowhere as a police officer. That's an alleged incident that happened. But let's have a look at Malcolm Turnbull and his position. Malcolm Turnbull regrets backing Peter Dutton on African crime comments. He regrets trusting Peter Dutton and condemned his rhetoric about a series of crimes linked to the Australian African heritage. Mr. Turnbull unleashed on his former Liberal colleague in an interview with SBS News following the release of his memoir, A Bigger Picture, recounting 4 decades as a major figure in Australian public life. When you're an idiot and you've said something racist once, oh, you can bet your ass that there are others. That doesn't stop with just one stupid comment. No. So we're going to show just why Peter Dutton's doing that. Because he's not interested in anything being legitimate. He's interested on doing the right wing, let's say the most awful thing, but dress it up and put little bows on it and make it sound like we're just asking questions. When even his own party is walking away from that stance. The Premier of Tasmania is like, hey, we should have the voice. But here's what's crazy. Here's a real part of history that will come into play there. Tasmania has no real Indigenous people. Why? Because they were wiped out, killed, slaughtered. That's just a fundamental fact. But even Tasmania can see that position was wrong. It's reprehensible that we're even here doing this. Okay. We are going to talk about Rupert Murdoch. Hold on, there is another one here, and there's one there. That's where it is. I don't know how I got rid of it, but I did. Okay. What did Rupert Murdoch do to democracy? Now, if you're watching the Dominion lawsuit, you've realised that what they say privately and what they say publicly are 2 different things. So what you're hearing publicly is, oh no, everything is bad and the left are all evil. What you're seeing privately is text messages where they admit that the 2020 election wasn't stolen, that Trump is a lunatic, and that Rupert Murdoch believes that he can get people elected So how did News Corp get in that very tenuous position that they never should have had? Let's have a breakdown of that. Okay, so Michael Pascoe, how News Corp damages the Liberal Party and Australian democracy. Listen to the way that this comes out. All right. Oh, it's going to do an ad thing. They know for a fact that Rupert Murdoch damaged democracy as a whole. Oh, that's not the video I wanted to play. There's another one that's meant to be here. The results have seen the Murdoch and fellow travellers pushing the Liberal Party to become more conservative, more disconnected from the centre, especially from women and the younger generation of voters, i.e. those under 50, and thus out of government everywhere on the big island of Australia. So basically we're left with the whole nation basically rejecting them. But they got this big scope still. Understand that as much as Friendly Geordies does, and people like me and other organisations like the Kangaroo Court of Australia and other channels that are promoting the reconfiguration of what you view and how to get these facts out there, there is a role that Murdoch is still playing that is very, very hurtful to our democracy. It's shifting a party away from being a political organisation and remaking the image of its ideological and corporate interests. Put differently, News Corp has done to the Liberals what it has done to journalism. In my view, the nature of the relationship between News Corp and the Liberals has made the Liberals incapable to a larger extent than other political parties of acting as a normal political organisation. That is because the Liberals have an undue dependence on News Corp. In other words, without Rupert Murdoch, the Liberal Party never would have been in that position. Same as Trump. So what you're looking at is Rupert Murdoch promoting these awful people, and now they've alienated women, people under 50, and now they've become an obsolete view. Here in Australia, not in the US. Turns out they still dominate the airways there. They need to rid themselves of this whole idea of free speech being absolutism. They need to figure out why he was allowed to mess in their democracy, why he isn't being charged with treason. And that's what I really think that he did. He messed with democracy. He gave people doubts that they never should have had. But it turns out Rupert Murdoch is not doing so well. The man could have been married for a 5th time. The conservative media mogul, 92, has reportedly split up with 66-year-old Anne Leslie Smith, less than 3 weeks after they announced their engagement. Now, that to me seems like a deliberate ploy to take away from the Dominion headlines. That's what I think happened. I don't think there was any legitimacy to it, and I think it was a stunt. And celebrities do it all the time. Okay, so every week we've spoken about how different pubs and clubs are rejecting having gambling functions to their clubs in terms of poker machines and all that sort of stuff. What happens if gambling agencies were caught tipping things in their favour? Now this is going to come underneath some pretty big regulatory issues. Okay, so there was an inquiry. Listen to this. This is insane. Betting inquiry sees wagering companies squirm over blocking winning gamblers. So what if you were really good at, say, poker? And what if they blocked you from winning? That's essentially the claim that's being put out there in a Senate inquiry. Okay, the head of Australia's largest online sports betting company and the chair of the parliamentary inquiry looking into the internet gambling have shared a tense encounter in Canberra over whether successful gamblers get blocked from betting. So if you're the idiot that's handing these idiots money, have at it. But understand that if you win too much, they're going to block you. And they're not even apologetic about it. The inquiry has had evidence that some companies will reduce maximum bets or block access entirely when gamblers are on a successful run. The House of Representatives chair, Peter Murphy, said that she knew someone who personally had experienced this treatment and pursued sports bet and entertain. The parent company Ladbrokes and Neds on the issue hearing in Canberra today. Sportsbet CEO Barney Evans' customers are blocked only in very narrow cases. If we believe that they're acting with information that the rest of the market doesn't have and their behavior is distorting the market, which means other customers' experience is affected, then we'll take action. In a tense to and fro, Mr. Evans twice repeated a similar response, despite Ms. Murphy's efforts to extract more information from him. Ms. Murphy concluded that by saying she would accept Mr. Evans' evidence as a yes, you stop people who are consistently winning from betting. That's your prerogative. Australia has some of the most relaxed gambling laws in the world. We're a sort of have at it, Hoss kind of people. We really have very limited regulation on this. So to know that they're even allowed to go as far as to block people who are winning too much because they can just make the absurd claim that maybe they've got inside information. This brings new meaning to the house always wins. This is like ensuring the house always wins. And to me, this is in a part showing that they cheat. I don't gamble. I don't know how to. I can't count cards. I don't know how to play poker or any of those games. I'm just not equipped like that. And really, money is too precious for me to even muck around. I wouldn't know what I was doing. Earlier, entertained Stephen Lang told the hearing that over 698,000 active customers in 2022, 176 had made money, and the company was required to offer bets to everyone for horse races. He conceded, however, that bets may be limited for other events.
Alice King there for one other.
So for some other events where there is less liquidity and less certainty in relation to the markers, we may impose some restrictions on a small number of customers, Mr. Lang said. Just need to quickly message and tell them this, because I thought, yeah, only family can get through that on the do not disturb. So that's clearly family. Nick McKinnon, the chair of the Responsible Wagering Australia lobby group, it covers much of the industry, said blocking winner gamblers is not industry practice overall, but inevitably there will be occasions where a customer is excluded. What I will do, because of that, the committee also heard from CEOs in the AFL and the NRL. A submission into the inquiry earlier in the year from the Coalition of Major Participation in Professional Sports, which includes the NRL and AFL, who pushed back against the regulatory change, starting existing regulations where appropriate. But 3 weeks ago, AFL Chief Executive Gillian McLachlan expressed sympathy with fans frustrated by betting ads in an interview on Melbourne Station 3AW. Now, this is where the really juicy part comes up. Today, AFL boss sought to clarify those remarks, saying that as time pressures in that interview, he argued that betting inducements were a problem, but not general or so-called brand advertising for wagering companies. Mr. McLachlan requested that any recommendations put forward by the committee to be balanced. I don't need to be convinced about the community sentiment. My job today is talking about it. It has to be balanced. We're a non-for-profit actually and spend the money on running access into a pathway into gaming and community. And the elite level and the committee needs to understand that the NRL's Andrew Abdo said that he was open to twerks in regulation, but it wasn't in a position to make suggestions over exactly where example for advertising restrictions could be adjusted. This country has an appalling rate of gambling issues. And I personally know people touched in my family from that very issue. So, yeah, it's I'm going to keep talking about it because I believe gambling, it can take out anybody. Just because I'm not smart enough to know how to gamble doesn't mean that there aren't people. There were people in my family that were smart enough to figure it out. And even if I could, the numbers don't look like numbers to me. Numbers weren't my thing. Maths. It's really difficult, which is why whenever I'm doing the shopping, my little calculator is out, my little pen and paper, and I look like a lunatic, which is how it works. Okay, could a church be liable? This part is going to come up. Okay. So Catholic Church potentially open to liability at scale never seen before after Court of Appeal ruling. Advocates and legal groups say landmark breakthrough over Catholic Church's culpability for crimes of pedophile priests will lead to better outcome for victim survivors. Yesterday, Victoria's highest court upheld a ruling that Catholic Church was vicariously liable for child sex abuse by priests, making it easier for a survivor to receive compensation. Ballarat abuse survivor Paul Arcelli knows too well that for the longest time the clergy abuse was encased in silence. He was abused by notorious pedophile Christian brother Robert Best, who was Arcelli's Year 6 teacher at a primary school. His younger brother Peter was also abused and died by suicide more than a decade ago. It's been said that he gave everything to the church when he was a child. But when reports started surfacing about a clergy abuse, people saw a major betrayal that had been rectified, that had still not been rectified. To open up the courts to identify the church that was an authority over our lives and responsible for the misbehaviour is a massive step forward. And I agree with that sentiment. And we definitely should be holding them accountable for that. Okay, so I think Melbourne is going in the right direction and we need to take this on as a federal level and then work with each state and territory as a whole and make abuse harder. You're never ever going to erase it. Understand things like this happen and you're never going to eliminate exactly how. Evil people will do evil things. You just need to make it harder for them to be able to do it, which is awful. Okay. This one is a really interesting story. Hundreds of Queensland police under disciplinary actions could be revoked following a Court of Appeals decision. Apparently, this came after it turns out there was police that were reprimanded for doing certain things, like one was done for, let's go into it so I can be more accurate. Okay. Police Commissioner Katrina Carroll has confirmed 300 cases will be reviewed after the Court of Appeal determined police service had been conducting disciplinary police proceedings in an invalid way. It's as if they never occurred because the person who made them wasn't properly appointed to that role. Last year, the Supreme Court ruled in favour of 2 police officers, Detective Senior Sergeant Cousins and Sergeant William Johnson, who was subject to disciplinary action. A delegate for the police commissioner would refer to a prescribed officer without stating who that was or their ranking. Queensland Police appealed the decision, but it was dismissed last month. The court ruling affects cases from November 2019 to late 2022. Acting Deputy Commissioner Mark Wheeler, who will head the committee, is looking into the cases and said a lot of cases will not be affected. On many occasions, people who will be affected have actually already been dealt with in some circumstances. But Commissioner Carroll says most of the concerns were 26 cases where officers were dismissed. The police commissioner confirmed that this could include actions taken against officers as a result of the 2022 inquiry into police culture. Like, being pro the neo-Nazi groups, that sort of thing. You have to understand that policing by and large is a very difficult job, but every once in a while you see something where you're like, nah, they've got to go. And if you ignore it, the problem becomes more systematic. And Queensland policing has had a problem since the early 80s, from what I understand, underneath Joe Bjelke-Petersen days. There was talks of real rampant corruption. Peter Dutton was a Queensland copper too, keeping that in mind, and he was even reprehensible to them. Okay, an independent committee led by Acting Deputy Commissioner Wheeler will look into every case that has been affected by the court ruling. These matters range from different types of conduct, including domestic violence, sexual harassment, misuse of information, drugs, and even minor matters. So that's what we're dealing with. Police that have done some pretty horrible things that could lose, that get the right to appeal, but because it wasn't handled properly. They get off on a technicality, not because they didn't do something wrong, which is how our criminal justice system is working right now. It's all about those technicalities, and that's going to be a problem. Okay, our last story for the day, the Trump arraignment. Now, I don't know about you, but I've heard enough about the guy being arraigned and what was going to happen when he got arrested, exactly how many felonies he was up for, and what did he look like as that was taking place. Okay, so the funniest thing about how New York cops wouldn't even hold the door open for Trump, he hasn't come out looking too great from this arraignment. And now that they've actually got him, that's still not, I'm not sharing it properly. I think it's 39 felonies that they're trying to get him with.
President Trump, will you come speak to us, President Trump?
Won't even give him eye contact.
Former President Trump entering the.
So, turns out that backing the blue may not have been the way to go. They don't really mean it anyway. They know that the only reason that he ever did was because some of them were very racist and it supported their agendas, really. if they really backed the Blue, they would have when January 6 happened. They would have, in terms of pay rises, they would have in terms of real support. They weren't interested in that. They were interested in playing politics and keeping their racism going. You know, it's appalling. Okay, I hope everyone had a wonderful evening. And I hope to see you next week. Have a happy Easter. And I will see you same time, same place next week. Thank you. Bye.